Hit like and subscribe. You're watching the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel.
Good morning, Ekaro. Welcome back to Ascending. It is so good to be back on this last Saturday of May. I have no idea how we got here this fast, but we are happy that you're here. I am your happy host, April R. Silver. We're going to just jump right into our basics. And as you all are getting ready, and if you're on Twitter, you're going to be switching over to YouTube, right? So that's a thing. If you're on Twitter watching this on the Marc Lamont Hill channel, go over to YouTube. Remember to tell us from where you are, where you're watching. So put that in the chat. We love to see the international audience. So welcome back to everybody. Welcome back to our regulars. We're very happy to see you. So let's just jump in. I'm going to let you know first that this is going to be a very powerful, one-of-a-kind, never done before episode of Ascending. We have a whole panel of some amazing, amazing Black men that I'm really, really excited to share with you, because our topic is Black fatherhood, right? The topic is the real conversation about Black fatherhood. And we're going to be discussing blood or bond, like what it means to be a father by blood or by bond. So get ready. Definitely tell us where you're from. But again, first, let me just shout out my A-team. Shout out to the guys who helped hold this down. Shout out to Marc Lamont Hill Official. We appreciate your work. We also want to do our, what are we doing? Bookmark. Yes, definitely. The bookmark for today is be a father to your child, right? This is actually, it's for fatherhood, because fatherhood is in what, like 2 weeks. But I had to shout out this book because it is my first book. I edited this anthology that I'm really, really excited about. That's Be a Father, Real Talk from Black Men on Family, Love, and Fatherhood. Came out in 2008, as you can see. Best experience of my life ever. One of the best things I've ever done. Shout out to Lauren Harris, whose idea this was. So it's available. We want you to get it from a Black bookstore, right? Even if you have to place your order, we want you to do that. But our Black media shout out is where you can get it from. So let's go to the Black media shout out. We want to shout out the African American Literature Book Club, and their website is aalbc.com, as you can see. But it's the oldest, largest, most frequently visited website. It was dealing with authors of African ancestry. Started in 1997. Shout out to Troy Johnson. So whatever book you need by Black folks, get it from there, right? aalbc.com. Been around forever, solid. And it's a really great resource if you're a new writer. So definitely remember that. But that's our Black media shout out for the week. We do that every week. So we definitely want to keep that tradition going. But Be a Father to Your Child is the book you got to have. I want to see in the comments later that y'all know where that phrase came from. I know there's people in the comments that know where Be a Father, where I got that title from, right? So let me see it in the comments. So on that note, without further ado, we are going to welcome our very esteemed panelists on Black fatherhood. So let's welcome to the stage these brothers who I love so, so much. Let's welcome Timothy Jones. Let's welcome JAM SHAKWI. Let's welcome CHEO Tyehimba Taylor. Let's welcome Kevin Williams. And let's also welcome, like when I say I have brothers, I really, really have a lot of brothers. But I only have one where we have the same mother and father. So let's welcome OMAR Silver as well to the conversation. Did I say everybody? Yeah, I got everybody. Oh my gosh, I'm going to try not to be like this 5-year-old goofy little girl. It is so good to see you all on this topic. How are you guys?
Good.
Good, April. Good to see you.
Yes. We got people from all over the country. We got Tim from the DMV area. Jan, what part of the country are you from right now? You're from, I mean, I know where you're from, but at any given point with you and your work that you do with young people, are you in New York? Are you in Kentucky? Where the hell? Where are you?
Bronx right now. I'm in New York.
Okay. All right. Welcome. CHEO, I know you're from the Bay Area. I don't know where you are in the world right now.
You know, I move around a lot, April, but yeah, I'm in Oakland. Yeah.
Yes. So welcome, CHEO. We're going to get into who these men are. I want to give a special shout out to Kevin Williams. As you all can see, he is a producer. He holds us down this is our 20th episode. Kevin's been with us since day one. So Kevin, I know you have a fatherhood story. So thank you for coming from behind the scenes.
Kevin, you're muted.
The producer.
Thank you. I'm getting out of producer mode.
I know, right? Good to see you, Kevin. Kevin is in the book. Kevin is in Be a Father to Your Child. Tim Jones is in Be a Father to Your Child. CHEO is as well. We'll get into all of that. And then my brother. Hi, Omar.
Hey, what's up?
So we have a lot of things to discuss. We will take some questions from the audience. So Drake Almighty is holding it down as the solo producer right now. So Drake, I'm okay with questions as we flow. So, of course, that'll be up to you. But I wanted, CHEO, I know you have probably maybe the time that is least. You might have to, go do some amazing other things. So I'm going to start with you. And what I want to do, CHEO, to start with you and get your feedback on your contribution to this book, To Be a Father, right? This is very specific to you, but I want the guys to weigh in after you weigh in, because your entry in the anthology was about the challenges that you experienced as a son, because at the time you didn't have your child, right? Because the book came out in 2008. So you talked about, on this topic of Black fatherhood, the absenteeism, for lack of a better phrase, of your father at the time, right? You gave us the journey of how your father wasn't around, and who you looked up to as you were growing up as a preteen, as a teen. And I thought it was a really, really compelling piece. I'm going to read a part of it really quickly, and I'm going to ask you to weigh in. So audience, bear with me as I read this really touching piece. And what you say, CHEO, and Drake, if we could get the guys on mute while I'm reading, I'm hearing a little bit of feedback. CHEO, you tell us, like most Black men of my generation, my relationship with my absent father was tenuous, if not non-existent. By the time I reached adolescence, I began to closely watch any Black man I encountered for clues. Black Rock, who was, you called him the neighborhood pimp, right? Who we knew at the time, of course, that was his code name, but he was also a drug dealer in the community. His name was Black Rock. You said he played his position well, and you learned to play yours. The lessons, being a Black man was measured by how much shit one could talk, how much money one made, how many women one could conquer, and this is the part that was telling, and how much pain one could inflict or withstand. That was your coming of age understanding of what it means to be a father. Now you go on to tell us that you developed a relationship with your father who came back into your family household, and you learned about that. But I'm most interested right now, CHEO, is the part that talked about you got your cues from being a man based on how much pain one could withstand. Could you expound on that?
Sure. So, can you hear me?
Uh-oh.
You can hear me.
Drake, do we have CHEO as
we can hear you.
We can hear
You can hear me. Okay. So yeah, April, it's wow, it's just an honor to be on this on this talk because you're taking me way back to 2008 when I wrote that. And my life has transformed about 2 or 3 times since then. But one thing that hasn't changed is that rear view, that rear view concept of Black men and Black masculinity and just masculinity in general, right? We didn't have the term toxic masculinity then, but that's what it was, and whether it was siblings or whether it was, just the ways in which your own father or uncle or any other male figure taught you how to man up, quote unquote, or how to, basically stuff down your pain. And that really was kind of, just like standard operating procedure, like, and it was, and what is that? It was a time, and I talk about this in the book, in the 80s, where crack flooded our communities. And so I was in San Jose, which was like, the right, San Jose, Oakland, San Francisco Bay Area. And you had Black Rock, the guy that I looked up to. He wasn't really a pimp, like literally a pimp with women, but he had that 70s swag, and he had a nice house. He had a lot of the consumer things that we identified with. And he was also selling crack. And so the idea of just, getting money, getting women, being able to just withstand, like I say, withstand pain, that did play a role. But then I think for me, what happened was I saw my father. My parents were in a very unique situation. They divorced when I was 2, but they remarried when I was about 16. So I was leaving the house at the time when my father came back. And when he came back, he basically just got his life together. He had been an alcoholic. He stopped drinking. But there was a 10-year struggle that I watched him go through, and our relationship didn't get repaired for about 10 years. So by the time I finished college, even beyond that, I could see this, the vulnerability really, which was the main thing. I saw how much he had and how much he allowed that into his life and how much he shared his own vulnerability with me. And that, in some way, going back, looking at this now, it's really interesting that, I wrote this, I have a daughter who's 17. So she was born right after after I wrote it, but before it was published, because it was published. She was born in 2007. This came out in 2008. And so, for me, that's just been also, just being her father has been one of the greatest lessons of my life in terms of how to be vulnerable, how to show up as a man, and we can get into that later. But the pain piece, that's something that I'm glad this generation, it seems like, are doing better at, are stepping into that. And on that journey, I didn't, at 15 or 14 or I was 13 or 14 when I was talking about this process, I didn't know that I would go on to work with young Black men in a rites of passage program in Oakland that really, in many ways, superseded the Black male achievement movement, that came after that. The idea of Black boys sitting in a circle and basically dealing with their pain, their trauma, their childhood pain, and men doing the same thing. So, yeah, I'm happy to talk about it more, but I'm glad that you picked out on that piece, because the title of the piece, if you go back and look, is "Who's the Man?" That was the title. And, that came from, that's just, I talk about hip hop culture. I talk about, hyper masculinity we saw in hip hop culture. We can go through the line and list the MCs in terms of how those videos were produced and what we saw, so I'm gonna stop there.
Yeah. I appreciate it. And I'm going to acknowledge a technical glitch, right? And the technical glitch was on my side. So, Che, I didn't hear the top part of what you said. So, Drake, what I want to do now, because my internet is wonky and it switched, I need to take like 3 or 4 seconds to get on the right one. Otherwise, we're going to have the glitch again. So, Drake, can I switch out and we just know that there's going to be a known pause? Drake?
Yeah, sure. If you like to go to someone else before you make the switch, that might work.
Say it again.
So I'll step in. So April, while you make the switch, I can because I was listening to that conversation, and what I was hearing from that, thinking about that, it actually put some things in perspective for me. Me raising two boys now, one 13, one 14 months, but the 13-year-old, right, and going through challenges, and we had a conversation recently, and I said something to him that actually really led to the how tough can you be, right? How much pain can you take? Um, how are people words going to hurt you like this? And what you just said made me in that moment right then just made me think. I was the lesson I was giving him was basically man up, right? Don't be that soft. So I what you said made me gonna have to rethink that a little bit more.
And, you know, listening to the comment about masculinity, if I can just go back for a moment, when I was, my daughter was born when I was 19 years old. So I was a sophomore at Howard. Freshman year, there was a situation where a person had put a gun to my head and pulled the trigger. Thankfully, it didn't go off. But all I could think about was, I'm getting revenge because he had hurt my psyche, my manhood, my perspective of who I was. I swore everything I was going to do, I was going to get this person. I had a plan. I was like, I'm going to go home. I'm going to take care of this. And when my girlfriend at the time became pregnant, my whole world was suddenly consumed, you know, with obviously becoming a father. Just completely changed my life. So in one way, fatherhood prevented me. I bumped into this person maybe 3 or 4 years later, and I saw him. I was like, I thought to myself, I was supposed to get this guy, but I didn't. I was completely lost. So in that way, the masculinity of, you know, fatherhood and masculinity is obviously connected. And where I was at that point in time, fatherhood actually saved me from doing something heinous.
Wow. Wow. I heard most of what you said, Kev. But the essence of what I heard is that fatherhood did right by you from the very beginning. I
Yes.
definitely heard that part. Let me say this about Rolando, right? And Drake, thank you for putting this up. It says, I love how language evolves, naming things brings meaning to them. Toxic masculinity was a beautiful addition to the lexicon. Rolando, let me just say this, and we won't have a long conversation, but I was 2 hours a day years old when I realized that you're that Rolando. I'll just leave it at that. That's all I'm gonna say. That's between he and I. I had no idea that you were that Rolando. But
Yeah,
Rolando,
I may have some questions, but that's because I'm your little brother. But you know, whatever.
No. This is good. This is a positive without figuring out Rolando, who's with us every week. but
April, can I say something to that,
yes,
to respond
please.
to this? So it's interesting because I think some of the brothers on this panel, I don't think I know the brothers on this panel, are spiritually aligned, and I don't have to even be. I don't. Some of the brothers I haven't met, but I've read some of their work. 2008, a long time ago. But things don't change, right? So it's interesting because I have, and I'm being just completely transparent. Like when I've heard millennials or even Gen Zs, banter and throw out the word toxic masculinity, which I agree is a problem. But I've seen it. I've also seen the other side of that. Like when I call it is divine masculinity, right? Because and nobody talks about the brothers that are spiritually rooted, that are emotionally conversant and vulnerable, and brothers that have stepped into these spaces over the last 30 years or 20 years who have been doing the work. I'm glad that it's a hashtag in terms of like self-care and being vulnerable and speaking your truth and also being able to be called when you're toxic. I'm glad that this generation is doing a better job, I think, than our generation did. But I feel like it's just, let's put some respect on the brothers that have been here doing this work and trying to do this work. And I'm probably the least of the, April, we've been doing work for a long time. So we know some of the brothers who've been fighting on behalf of battered women, who've been stepping into all kind of spaces. So I just wanted to I don't know. I guess I'm just wanted to put that out there.
No, but
I will say at some point, as opposed to putting the adjective in front of it, we need to actually redefine the word.
There you go.
So that it's not, oh, it's toxic masculinity. No, toxic masculinity is not masculinity. Right. We need to be able to walk in the embodiment of, which would lean more to that divine masculinity. So sometimes the adjective helps, but sometimes the adjective becomes a crutch. And so I'm a proponent that our life's mission is to rightly define so that it is what it's supposed to be, and anything that exists outside of it is not that.
That's a powerful point.
I definitely agree with
100%.
I would definitely agree with Tim on that, because as a coach, I find myself having to be a father figure for so many of the kids that that are under my tutelage as athletes, who are just missing dads, not necessarily in the home, but missing in action, in their presence in their lives. A lot of dads are at home and yet still absentee fathers, because they're not involved in the children's social lives, academic lives. You know, they're providing shelter, food, clothing, but redefining masculinity definitely should be one of our goals.
Yeah, I would agree. And CHEO, thank you for even being vulnerable in that way, right? And helping us to just, balance it out. I think that's what you offered just now is some balance. So I really, really appreciate it, because that's just who you are, CHEO. But I want to use this opportunity, for sure, and to go to Kevin, because I want to take a moment and read a little bit of an excerpt. So bear with me, because Kevin, this is going to be for you, and then we can expand. So while I'm reading that, let's put our phones on mute. This might be a little bit longer than I thought, but just bear with me. Kevin, yours is called Truth and Reconciliation, right? Your entry in Be a Father. And it says apartheid, a legal policy of racial segregation formerly practiced in South Africa involving political, social, and economic discrimination against non-white people. After almost 50 years of rule, apartheid ended in 1993, and the people of South Africa led Truth and Reconciliation hearings. They wanted information about the systems of oppression, kidnappings, and murders committed on behalf of the government so that they could move forward. Recently, I spent 16 days in South Africa listening to people's stories of life under apartheid. They spoke of how they were able to move on, and it forced me to reassess a personal situation I was currently embattled with, the custody and child support of my daughter I was raising. How could I forgive is what you asked yourself. Compared to what I had just learned from the people of South Africa, my fatherhood issue seemed so small. South Africa's apartheid was the current event news of the day. When my daughter Chantel was born, I was 19 and attending Howard University in Washington, D.C. Hip hop was is what we now call the golden era. Public Enemy and KRS-One helped me understand the world I was living in. The worries of, you say also, as a full-time college student, I did my best. I worked 6 days a week, spent the 7th day with Chantel, who also lived in DC with her mother, your former girlfriend. You had agreed that you would pay half of the expenses. And you say, closing out, the worries of making ends meet kept me awake at night. Little did I know that these worries were just the tip of the iceberg. And from what I remember, Kevin, this whole thing that you struggled with the court system, with how mothers are centered in the court systems and all of the battles that you had to do, legally, you opened our eyes. I want people to go get the book so they can get more. But this whole concept of truth and reconciliation, that you were dealing with, and if you said it before and I froze, forgive me. So just bring us to that, and then the guys can weigh in.
Oh no, I definitely didn't say it before. I obviously I still struggle with truth and reconciliation throughout life, but that's just the more people you come across, the more people that upset you. But just at the time I was a full-time college student and was being paying half the expenses. Some friends told her, no, you can't trust that. Winds up taking me to court. I go to court. I'm in class. I have to cut class to go to court. And one of the judges tells me, you're going to have to quit college in order to support her. At the time, at first I had just finished working and had an internship. So I had money saved up so I could continue to pay the expenses. But the woman basically threatened to tell me I had to quit school. And I said, I have a year left. Like this is crazy. So I kind of struggled with that. Fast forward, maybe 2 years later, I wound up with custody of my daughter. And then when I take her to court for her to pay, they announce one figure. She says, I can't pay that. They say, what can you pay? Judge is like, okay, fine, that's it. And they pay that one amount. And it stays that way for years. So I had struggles. Systemically, it was a problem for me. Systemically, there were times where they had taken away the child support because I moved to the Bronx. They transferred to the wrong county. When I tried to reinstate it, they wouldn't let me reinstate it because I was a man. They said if I was a woman, they would have reinstated it fine, even though I had the support order. They told me I also had to have a custody order. So so in dealing with the system and recognizing how the system was very difficult for me, I guess it just made it a challenge. I was a young father. Like I said, I was 19. I had full custody of her by the time I was about 23, I guess. And, it really took a village. It took a village of April. I'm sure you did her hair at times because we lived around the corner from each other. A lot of women from Black Near Force, I would involve, please, can you do her hair? Well, my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, when she moved away, I just needed support because I had no idea what it was to raise a woman. So, fatherhood for me was definitely a journey that couldn't have happened without the women in my life.
Guys, I think I'm back. The good thing, can you all hear me okay and see me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. The devil's a liar. I know that. Let's be great. So if I freeze again, what the blessing is that you all can carry the conversation without me.
You can't do that.
They can't do that. Kevin, I heard much of what you said, and I'm grateful. And I remember, I definitely heard you say the part where the women of Black Near Force. For those who don't know, if you've said it already, forgive me. That was a radical student activist group on the campus of Howard University. But when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, I remember. I remember that part about doing your daughter, things of that nature. So thank you. Here's Sandra or Sandy. I've always admired your quiet strength, Kevin. Admittedly, I had no idea you were going through all of that. Love you. Yes, we love you.
Oh, thanks, Sandy.
So Tim, let's go to you if I can. And if I freeze again, y'all just carry on because y'all are them dudes. But Tim, I wanted to I'm going to paraphrase because I'm looking now that as I pull excerpts from Be a Father, I just want to choose the whole essay.
You're pulling chunks.
Yeah. Yo, ain't nobody surprised.
I was about to say the English historian doesn't know how to pull a. Like, you asked her to pull a couplet. She's like, "Well, pull three." Really
context matters. If you leave out that period,
exactly. And it's like and then there's a picture in there, so I gotta verbalize the picture or stuff.
Yeah, y'all know me well. Y'all know me well because I was speaking of pictures. This is our very. Do y'all remember this? This is our very
taking us back.
Yes, that was our first book signing. And this is not even all the guys. There are 24 guys in Be a Father, right? And so these are just some of them. CHEO, you're in there. Kevin, where are you? I don't know. I think you're in there somewhere.
Kevin's right behind Davey D.
Yeah, I see. But this is 2008. We had like 200 people show up at that church. That's why we got to do a part 2. But yeah, so Tim, you know me well. As I was reading, I was like, oh shit, this is long, but I couldn't stop. But Tim, what you talked about in your essay, which is Love, Lessons, Learning, and Leadership, you talked about how hip hop helped you to understand fatherhood. And this is a really, really good segue into what it means to be a father figure or a father that's not biological, right? You talked about how hip hop was one of your first, if not the first, that let you know that brotherhood and having bonds with people supersede blood in a lot of different ways. You, one of 5 boys, you know, shout out to your mom, Mrs. Jones, and to your father as well, who have transitioned, but you came from strong stock. So talk about what bonding means when it's just not biological.
So really quick, like I describe the fraction with my father as I'm the youngest of 5 boys. So imagine you're waiting to get on a roller coaster and you see people get on and you get so excited. And then when it's your turn, they shut down the ride. And so what I mean by that is I saw my father be a father to my older 3 brothers. And then by the time it came to me, I'm in middle school. We're sitting on the couch. He's telling me that him and my mom are breaking up and it's not going to be him leaving me. But that wasn't the case. I'm also old enough where hip hop was introduced to me in units. Like, honestly, yes, Curtis Blow was a solo MC, but everything about hip hop was crew. You know, if you think back about it, I mean, just the names, everything was crew oriented. And then I get to Howard University and we form our own clique. We form Lu Fi because if we gonna pledge anything, we gonna pledge ourselves. So I've always been blessed with bonds that weren't rooted in being biologically connected. And by the time I was writing this piece, I had married and formed a blended family. So I reconnected with a woman from high school who at the time had a daughter who was 5. And as God would have it, because Kev knows the system is crazy, my wife's maiden name is Jones. So her daughter's name was Jones. So then when we got married, I was able to roll to school, have my name on the emergency card. She was the same. She was the outside of the snicker like I am. So everybody just looked and was like, oh, that's your daughter. Boom. And because we never used the term step. Never. She's 34 to this day. We never used the term step. And so hip hop to me really was that precursor. Like hip hop gave me that foundation. And then, I mean, this is the 80s. The Cosby Show kind of gave me the blueprint. That's like, okay, when I wanted to be a father, I wanted to be a husband. And you know, for me, I think a lot of times we talk about fatherhood, and yes, fatherhood takes place outside of marriage. But for me, my desire as a child was I wanted to be a husband and I wanted to be a father. And so Jasmine allowed me to be both. And then I had a son on my birthday. So that for me was the ultimate, you know, being a father, because I was able to have the relationship with him that I didn't have with my dad. And then I reconnected and healed with my dad, honestly, not too long before he passed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to speak on that because, and you know why I want to speak on it. But so my 13-year-old is adopted, look nothing like me. He's Latin. My 14-month-old is with my current wife, but I'm not able to have kids, so we had to go another route. But not adopted. So being a father to those that don't carry your DNA has never been a struggle for me as far as my connection. I can't imagine if they were my DNA, I probably couldn't exist because the love I have for those two is all consuming as is. But Tim, hear you speak about that bond, even when it's not biological, I think it's just as strong. I won't know. I will never know, but I know, in my soul what consumes me, and it's those two boys and making sure they grow up a certain way and making sure that they present to the world a certain way and add value to the world a certain way. And for me, it's full circle. So you Tim, I think someone spoke about a father, not just, it's JAM, not just being about being present, but like being a part of, right? So father could be present, could be there, but not necessarily be that mentor, be that, engaged. For whatever reason, history, you can ask my sister about it. I have a different memory of my childhood. So my father was always around, always. But I won't say that as engaged. But what that did is give me as a thought in my head what not to be. It gave me an example, and I once heard in a sermon, everyone is an example to you. Everyone has value, even if it teaches you what you don't want to do. So, and creating that bond with people, and creating that bond, and that bond that I have with my sons that aren't biological, I still have an example of what I didn't want to do. So I am fully engaged, and some of my 13-year-old would say too engaged at times. It's like, Dad, you're a little bit too intense. Can you bring it back a bit? And the answer is, nah, man, I can't.
Omar, to your point, when you was posing the question, I would say they are strong. They are just as strong, but they're different. And I think sometimes we will place a value on different, like one is better, but there's just a difference. That my love that I have for my daughter, there's some lessons about myself that loving my daughter, who was not my biological, my son, who is my biological, couldn't have taught me.
Right.
Because it's almost like the loving by choice, like versus like for me, I have biological brothers. I didn't get to choose them, but Kevin is a brother by choice.
That's right.
And when I got married, it was my brothers by choice who was standing next to me, not my brothers by birth. And it wasn't to discredit them.
Right.
And so there's nuances to it. And Jam, I got young people in their 40s now who still call me Pop, because I was with them when they were teenagers. And I don't think I would be the man that I am if I had the relationship that I wanted to have with my father. So there is a purpose and promise that can be extracted from pain that makes you look back. Like, scars play a purpose too.
That's right.
Yeah.
Different.
Jim, I wanted to come to you because I'm saving you for last.
All right.
Just because I can. But Tim, you know this is why this subject is as it is, blood or bond, right? Yep. And this real conversation about Black fatherhood. So Jam, I want to come to you, and if I've missed anything that you've addressed this, so forgive me. But before I even ask you the question again, if you are watching on Twitter, thank you, but please move over to YouTube. It really benefits this independent Black channel that we get more viewers on YouTube than Twitter. We're grateful for wherever, but please please comment, and please switch over. So I just have to say that part. So Jam, you in terms of my brotherhood, right, which is all of you all and a whole bunch of other folks, you had your first child when we were all in school, right? Yes. And again, that was our first Black Near Force baby. And so that and Jihad is you had a son, and then you had two girls, right? Yeah. So you've been present. And at the same time, you are this amazing coach, award-winning, track and field, getting people into colleges on scholarships or whatever. Did you go to the Olympics? What you got, like?
Not the Olympics, but the Olympic trials. My athlete was at the Olympic trials in 24.
Okay. I say that to
Olympics, 28.
20. Okay. But I'm just setting the stage that from a young age, you became a father. And now 35 plus years later or whatever, you're still fathering and in that way as a coach. So tell us about that experience. Can you co-sign what Tim was saying about the bond being different?
Not deficient, right?
Strong? Yeah.
Well, first, I want to go back to what CHEO has said. My first connection with fatherhood started obviously as a son, and I grew up with a father in my house, active and present. My father was an outdoorsman. That's why I learned how to hunt and hike, even though we were living in Brooklyn and in the Bronx. And I emulated my father throughout my life. And then we get to the 80s, crack era. And crack, which we didn't understand at the time, took him out. He went from being the neighborhood guy, the great dad, everything, the present person that he was, to being a literally street crackhead. And I had to watch and see him while losing him as a person, where our relationship got so frayed that at one point I had to actually put a gun to his head because he had become so crazy. And this was the guy who I used to want to walk like, talk like, dress like, because he was like everything to me. So I lost him late in life. And then we eventually did reconnect after I had my son, but it gave me a great foundation. And seeing how he was with the neighborhood kids, I've always wanted to be that guy and be a part of kids who don't have someone who's active and willing to be in that actual role. So now I coach, as April said, I've got almost 500 All-American titles, 100 plus scholarships with my athletes, one's Olympic trials. And I'm still doing it to this very day. Number one athletes in the country. We just came in swept city champs last week. And even though I keep saying I'm going to quit and I want to turn into something else, I find it hard to let go.
Yeah. And do you're with your coaching, like we know that you're a great father, ups and downs notwithstanding. Are you that paternal figure with some of your athletes? Like Tim said, and even in his piece, like Tim, you referenced Dr. Harvey, who was that father figure, right? So Jim, do you have those relationships where you're filling in the gap?
Oh, all the time. I even have one. I tell the story because it's emblematic of everything else. Where I had a Caucasian young lady, and she got a college scholarship. And as most kids do, they bring myself and my partner a T-shirt or a hat. She brought me a hat back, and she went to Smith College, and it said Smith Dad. And I said, "Oh, babe, you gave me the wrong hat." And she was like, "Oh no, Coach Jam, you have been so much more to me than just the coach." And that was so touching. I'm used to that from Black kids. But this was a privileged, well-off white girl who literally gave me a Smith Dad hat and told me, "You've been that guy." So,
Wow.
it's poo-poo it and say, yeah, I'm here, I do what I do, blah, blah, blah. But at that point, I really started taking it very consciously serious that I'm playing that role. And it doesn't even matter where the kids come from.
Right. Or what race they are.
Or what race they are, right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a perfect segue to Mr. Silver.
Yeah. I was going to be quiet because I heard you say only like a little brother can. Won't you be quiet for a sec? I got you covered. I heard those words.
So, Omar, I'm saving you for last for so many different reasons. But I'll start with the last part, which Jam has referenced. My nephew, your son, Giovanni, is a Latino boy.
Yep.
And your love for him is palpable. Like since like you said, he's you're an adoptive father. And for a long time, let's put it that way. You also were honest and vulnerable, which I wasn't sure if you were going to say this, publicly in front of thousands of people across the world.
Yeah.
That Maddie, my nephew, your son, who's 14 months, is not your biological son, right? And your wife is white.
Yep.
Maddie is a white child.
Right. Well, my
Racially
racial, yeah.
speaking.
His
Yeah.
his
Right. Oh, oh,
his DNA is black and white. Yeah.
okay. So racially speaking.
Yeah, racially speaking. Yeah.
Yes. And so that's a lot of different whatever. I don't even know the right words, right?
Yeah.
But here you are as deeply present. And Tim, I think your articulation was excellent. I just want you to weigh in, Omar, on that and how you feel about it, because Tim, the love is not identical, right? That we can have for one another, but it's equitable. And to you use your words, Tim, it's just different. But in some ways, we wouldn't even be who we were it not for these non-biological relationships. So Omar, speak to that. Does that weigh on you at all? Does it
Oh, it
shape?
weighs on me. It weighs on me every single day during the process but look, there's just some moments where you go, this is the way it was supposed to be, right? This is the and the way I think things, this is the universal truth. This is what was supposed to happen. For example, Giovanni, or as I call him, Jay Boogie. It was a long process. I've had him since he was 14 months, fostering at first, 14 months old. So I saw him at the same age that my youngest is now. When I first saw him, because it was just supposed to be for a weekend. When I first saw him, he walks through the door. My wife at the time brings him through the door. I'm like, yeah, he ain't going back. Like, this is going to be longer than a weekend. Right. So it was instant. It was a lot of things, because he was meant to go back to his biologicals. So it was a long process, but I knew this is what was supposed to happen, even though it wasn't easy. So that I just had a conversation with him based off of an episode that I saw between you and Sandy, right?
The adoption episode.
Yeah. So I had, because he and I are going through struggles. So I had a conversation with him because of what you all did and shared and how it impacted me. But what I said to him was like, but this is not an audition. I am your father. That doesn't change. I'm not, this is what it is. He knows that Maddie, my youngest, isn't my biological, right? So, and that was important to me, because I'd never wanted him to feel a certain kind of way. So I made that known. Now, the struggle of knowing that Maddie wasn't going to be my biological, yeah, that definitely weighs on me every day. Never changes.
In what way? Like,
so there's a manhood thing about it, right? So there is, I think that says, you the one that can't make it. Like that's a manhood thing. So I had to deal with that. And every day I have to live with that. And I had to also do, what I also had to do was I have to live with it every day. When people say, oh, he looks just like you, or he's going to be just like you. Not everyone knows. My in-laws don't even know. So if they're watching this, they know now. But so when he says they look like, I have to take that in and kind of let it just sit with me, right? My wife and I have a discussion afterwards, but that's a thing, right? For me, personally, and on my manhood, but that's my boy, right? His name is Matthew. We call him Maddie after our great grandmother. So like that's my boy. That nothing changes that. What I sit with is the manhood thing. What I need to teach them.
Like, do you feel less of a man? I want to make
absolutely, sure. I struggle with that. Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean,
because you couldn't biologically produce. Right. That's what the manhood thing.
Yes, absolutely. But that doesn't consume me. But I would be lying if I said it doesn't hit me from time to time, right? So I mean, but that's just that is what it is. It doesn't affect it. Like I said, that I'm not ever going to have a child, so I don't know what that bond is, the DNA biological, but that my bond with those two boys, and you saw the video. My wife showed me a video, and I can't show it to you guys. It was just on my ring or whatever, and I was showing my son something in the driveway, and I said, "Come here, boy." And so he comes out, and he and I walk back the same way, hands in pocket, walk back looking at this thing. I showed it to April, my sister, and she's like, "I thought you guys were doing a dance." It was completely unintentional. It's just the bond that we have. right? He is a mini me. Maddie will be the same way. But so that bond is just, that's just a real thing. And it stems from my relationship with my father, as fractured as it is, and fractured is saying the word kindly. Like there's a bigger word somewhere, but he gave me good and bad examples, and I try and use them all. The relationship that I've had with my friends, good and bad, I try and use that as an example. Definitely relationships I've had with my uncle, especially my uncle Ted. I use that as an example. When I finally got to adopt Jay, I went to my uncle Ted's like, I'm about to bring in another silver in the family, like kind of like for his blessing. So I'm about to get this boy out the last name. But yeah, so it's just for me, that bond is what's important, and I try and make sure that they understand the bond, right? And then I deal with my struggles of the manhood thing.
Right. CHEO, let me ask you this, because I know, thank you, Omar. I got to come back to you on something else, but I want to balance this out. But CHEO, because in your essay, and what beyond the essay, the experiences, your father wrote you his autobiography, and it helped you. It seemed like it was like a watershed moment. Like you saw him in a different way. There was a greater appreciation. What about this thing of reconciliation and maturing and looking at things, in a different way? Can you elaborate on that just a little bit more?
Sure. So it was an evolution, right? Because he actually wrote that much later, but I saw how, my parents were young when they married. 20.
Right.
My father was 20. My mother was like 22. So, and it was true love, right? So they're together now in their 80s, but they got back together. And during that time, there was a lot of struggle that he had personally, because he just didn't have the skills that were given to him. So it's this intergenerational, lack of like fathering. And so he eventually, I saw how he struggled. I saw how he conquered, was able to keep a job, was able to keep his promises, and was able to basically show up and reclaim his three sons and be there for his family. And also how gifted he was as a writer. So when I read it, I just knew that even before that, I knew that I was going to be a better father. And for me, even, when my daughter was born, and going back to some other things that Omar and Tim was saying, I adopted the term bonus kids, because I have two bonus kids, and I have my own biological daughter. But it's all who we mentor, it's all who we bring together, and it's all a blessing to have the opportunity to be a father. And so for me, my daughter was born and we had a naming ceremony and we brought her into our community. I became a baba, not just a father. So for me, I see myself, and that's what she calls me. That's that has a deeper spiritual meaning for me, right? And holds me to a higher level. That's why I talked about with the divine masculinity. But I agree, it's always evolving, it's always changing, but we have to show up. And when you're a father, your kids make you show up. If you're trying to do it, if you half-assing, but you've already put the love, but then you're just like Omar was saying, just being present, you can't just sit in the house. It's like they're gonna pull you into their lives. And I don't know, I just feel like our generation was in a place where we were missing so much. Like somebody else said, we know what not to do. And so we show up, probably in some ways, I don't know if we've sheltered our kids. That's a whole nother conversation.
That's part two.
But if I can say really quick,
yes.
just and CHEO and one, Omar, thank you so much for sharing. All of us relatively are in the same age bracket, and we often talk about history like it's really, really far away. So based upon our age, it's safe to say that our parents, for the most part, were born in Jim Crow.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that to say that there were things that they dealt with that just became suppressed. I feel like we are that first generation to even create space to start having conversations. But we're not the first generation to go through things that are worthy of having these conversations. And so we came up with, the man is like, listen, I put a roof on your head, I put clothes on your back. Every time you click the lights, they came on and there was food in the refrigerator. I'm done. And it wasn't until I got older to then understand my father at his best could only father me how he was fathered. But he never told me the story of him not being fathered until he was in his 70s. And we're having conversations about like, yo, why are you always angry? And, you know, we take it to Pete. I got a right to be hostile. My people are being persecuted. And then he starts telling me a story because April, we are connected because our parents, Suffolk, Virginia.
Yep.
So he's telling me a story like I'm 78 and I'm walking into a store and feel like I'm being looked at the same way as when I was back in Suffolk. So then I'm like, okay, so you've been angry longer than I've been alive.
Chris Rock says,
And so, you know, so just building, so just developing a level of understanding. And one of the things, like, because we think about forgiveness as letting people off the hook and all this other stuff, and we get that so wrong that I will say it was my son that really drove me to reestablish my relationship with my dad, because his thing was, how can you be a father to all of these other young people and you not be with your dad?
Yeah. Your son is constantly checking you. That makes your life.
I think he lives for that. Like, but also it's like when you look at him, so then it becomes that mirror window.
Yes.
But and, you know, and Omar, to you, the last thing I'll say this, when I had told my son that I was not the biological father to his sister, tragic. It's only been one conversation. Never will say it again. Never.
Wow.
And it was one of those things. And I thought I was doing the right thing.
Right.
And it just it was wrong. And so it's one of those things. We're a family. We are a nucleus. Our family is 4, and it's not about hiding it.
Right.
Because she has a grandmother that he knows is not her grandmother, but just to try to have that conversation, to even plant the slightest seed for imagination and different being deficit, is what Jam said. He was not having it. And I honored that. And I was like, bro, I will never, ever.
Right.
Wow.
This is so powerful. And Cheo, I'm mindful of your time just in case. And we are going to get to the
I have about 15. I'm good.
Okay. So I gotta bear with me, family, as I try to articulate this, and I want to be sensitive, but I gotta ask about there's something to be said and applauded, but also it's got to be humbling. This thing of reconciliation, right? Tim, you set the tone for what I was trying to articulate, and this is this notion of forgiveness or introspection rather, because to your point, Tim, who we are now as 50, all of us I think are 55 or older, right? And we see things differently, right? We are of the type that will interrogate ourselves and check our feelings. Do our fathers get our grace for all of the things that they didn't know, all of the things that they couldn't articulate, and not only because they were holding back, like I don't want to talk about that, but they don't know how. There's a deficit of emotional intelligence, I would, by and large, of Black men in general, and certainly those who were of the Jim Crow era, right? There's some crud that probably ain't gonna be chiseled off, emotionally speaking. what role does forgiveness or reconciliation, or how does that fit? How does that go with, but I got to have my boundaries because the hurt is too much? I hope I'm making sense.
Yeah, can
Yeah,
I
Oh, I got one on that.
okay, if I can just jump.
Respond. Sorry.
Okay, so no problem. If I can just jump in on that. In talking about it, I know we all have different stories with our fathers. My father was in my life, active in my life the entire time. My parents were married for 51 years. My father was older. You know, he had his own trauma. He wasn't raised well. He never really spoke much about his father. I know his parents were divorced when he was young in the 40s, and he'd gotten into some trouble. And his escape out was to join World War II. So he became a veteran. He never really talked much about being young. And it wasn't until I kind of became a father, was older, had, you know, my daughter who's now 37, you know, then I had another younger child. And in dealing with that, I was starting to recognize where the bad parts about them, where they came from, where they generated from. And I started to have those conversations with them. I was like, you know what? I should film it. I just got a video camera and I started to film it. Unfortunately, he had a stroke maybe about a month or two later, and then couldn't talk. So I never really got all of those stories out of him, you know, but just kind of in the reflection, the reflective moments, I recognize like the power of the role model, for the positive aspects, the negative aspects. And then also I saw the question, like, what are we doing? How are we pushing it forward? I know there was a group here in the Bronx called, I think it's Dad's House in the Bronx, where they had an event where they just brought fathers in, just a collective, just come in and just speak about different issues. And I was like, I didn't get a chance to go, but I was trying to like arrange my plans so I could go. Cause I'm like, you know, as an older father, I want to be able to share kind of the wisdom, the things that I have, what I've learned, the mistakes, because I think too often we're not necessarily doing that. We know that fatherhood is an issue and the role models might not always be correct. But for those of us that are doing the best job that we can and doing pretty well, we should probably begin to find ways to share that knowledge.
Yeah.
Right. Jam, I want to go to you because I knew the story. You've told me the story about how your father went from, you know, this giant of a man, and then, you know, crack cocaine, not just drugs, but crack cocaine, right, transformed him into something else. Do you weigh in, please?
Well, first I'll say forgiveness has absolutely played a huge role. And it took a long time for me to be able to forgive. There had to be more maturation. Then I had to understand, you know, when I grew up, when we grew up, we knew what heroin was, right? Heroin made you a junkie. Everyone was clear. That was real bad. Crack was brand new. So living through it as it was becoming the scourge that it became in our community was like, I don't understand this stuff, you know? So it's played a huge role. And I'm hoping it plays a huge role even in my relationship with my son, who I'm actively involved with. But there's been periods, because I grew up knowing how to be a father to a child that was present. Having my son at Howard, he then grew up in Chicago. And it was, to say the very least, a hell of a struggle mentally to try to reconcile how to be a father and not be physically there, right? And so I did a good job sometimes, and I did a real crappy job other times, you know. And his mother and I mean, she just passed away recently, but we had a good relationship. Then we had the worst relationship, where I even had to deal with his stepfather primarily as my main point of contact, because she and our relationship was so fractured at one point. And I'm grateful that she and I was able to reconcile years before she became ill, years before she passed away. But I hope that forgiveness always plays a role in that, because I know that I need it as much as I gave it to my own father.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you. Omar, I know you wanted to weigh in.
Yeah, because we had this conversation somewhat recently when you were here.
We had a breakthrough, you and I.
Yeah. We had forgiveness, grace, extremely important for me, to me, because I want forgiveness and I want grace. I definitely want it from my wife, from my ex-wife, from my boys later in their life. Well, my 13-year-old now, but also I think it starts with sorry, right? So that's my sticking point. So I am, flawed or not, permanent or not, I am not able to provide forgiveness and grace without sorry. I don't need an explanation, right? I don't need the whole thing, and I don't need you to say it more than once, but I need you to recognize there was something there. So my 13-year-old has a problem with saying sorry. I know where he gets it from. He doesn't get it from me because I say sorry all the damn time. I say sorry when you don't think I offended you because I know I meant to. Like it's like, all right, that's my bad. I came from a wrong place there. So, and then it's that person's choice to forgive or to provide grace. And now my father's too old. When I don't think, because I don't know, because my sister I've made my sister our only child when it comes to both set of parents. Our little sister's on too. Yeah, but yeah. So, but from what I understand, they may not have the ability to say sorry. So I'm going to, and I said this to April a while ago, I'm going to, chances are, have to die with that. And that's going to be my struggle, because what I'm going to know is that I didn't provide that grace and that forgiveness. But I can't get it out of my head that without the sorry, without acknowledging that there was something, because if you just say, but I'm your mother, I'm your father, it's like, but you hurt me. And I need you to acknowledge that. I don't need you to say why. I don't need you, just acknowledge that I was hurt, and then I am good. And then let's try and get to a point. So that could be my stubbornness, but yeah, forgiveness, grace, extremely important. And I want it for myself, but I also I'm going to start the way that I think it should be started. And I'm going to say sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to jump in with that, Omar. I'm going to say, going through what I went through with my father and the crack epidemic, sometimes they don't have the ability to say sorry. And if forgiveness is about the person who's doing the forgiving,
mm-hmm.
right? You have to, in my opinion, you don't have to do anything, but get that weight up off of you. That forgiveness has to be more about you than them. Because if you recognize, as Tim pointed out, that our parents grew up through Jim Crow and through these other things, they were broken. They were broken, whether we believe it or not, accept it or not. They were broken. I don't think anybody can be black and grow up in America and not be broken in some way, somehow.
Right.
And if we have to, if we accept that as a premise, then we have to accept the fact that, it may be beyond them to understand, recognize, or even in your father's case, with his health conditions now, have the ability to say sorry. But your forgiveness has to be more about you and less about him.
I agree 100%. And so 100%, which means I can forgive my parents for certain things or long-term things. That doesn't mean I have to talk to them.
I mean, listen, I'm with that. I cut off all the time.
But also, and Tim, I saw you nodding your head, so I'm gonna turn this over. The point that I was gonna say, I believe, and Omar, I think I've said this to you before, I believe that there are different kinds of communication. I believe that words are, Omar, words are important. The sound, the vibration, the order of words, all of it. I have an abnormal connection to words, right? And at the same time, what's bigger to me is not the order, the vibration, the origin of the word, the etymology, not the science or whatever, but the intention, right? And bigger than that is communication itself. I happen to believe that communication amongst humans actually can exist in the way that we have our five senses and in the way that it's just present. There is a non-verbal, spiritual, non-physical way that humans communicate, I believe, right? And there's a lot of I don't know why Ish just came into my mind. There's a whole bunch of evidence to prove it. You know what I mean? In the world. So for whatever it's worth, and I'll just say this, your father, Omar, this is specific to you. Your father, I promise you, and it's not going to work unless you need to hear from him, but I promise you, your father is sorry for the pain that he caused. It might not matter because you're getting it from me, right? But I also know that I have a relationship with our father that is different because I'm a girl, but daddy's girl, and also because I'm a daddy's girl, and conversely because I'm not a son. Right? That whole thing around manhood and masculinity that you talked about earlier today, that you deal with because your sons who you love more than words can articulate. You love them more than words can articulate, which proves my point earlier. I can tell you that your father and your mother don't wish you any pain ever have, not in their right mind. Not in their right mind. I know that for sure, but maybe it doesn't matter, and there's no judgment. Maybe it doesn't matter because you need to hear from them. I'm asking us to consider the communications that that happen when we come from each other. I tease you all the time, and Tina, I'm going to turn it over to you. I tease you all the time, whether you know it or not, Omar. We're 11 months apart. Everybody in the audience watching, when we were growing up and people was like, oh, who's the oldest, right? And I would be like, oh, I'm older by 1 year. And Omar would be like, no, you're not.
I ain't roll my head like that though. Yeah.
Really, she's 11 months older.
That's right.
So so that's a real thing, right? Yeah. So we joke about that internally. But in my maturation, I'm like, yo, for real, in our mother's womb, there's probably some of me that was on you when you were conceived. You understand what I'm saying? So,
yeah.
So,
I'm about to say, you gonna pass it to me after that? Like, like, yeah, hot potato, you go. You go with it. Like,
now go with it. Yeah.
I'm saying that we have ways that we connect that are physical, that are spiritual. We share the same womb. There's things that I'm not even trained enough to understand. I know it viscerally. That might be worth considering when we think about what we need to hear or feel or what we need to exist. That's all. Tim, you can take it from here or not.
No, but I'm going to build off of what Omar and what Jan was saying, and even from my own experiences with my dad. I think when they may come to a point where they feel sorry, there still could be the presence of fear about saying it. Because oftentimes when they come to that realization, there's already been extensive separation. And so it's like, can you think about it? If we watch the Hallmark Channel, we ain't the protagonist in many of those movies. So the thought of them coming to that, which is already a struggle, and then it's like, is there a relationship where I could even share that and it would make sense? Because there's still going to be that self-preservation and protection there that then holds it back. And so then if we are operating where we have to hear it, then it's like we're placing conditions on, as opposed to just creating the space to allow God to move, which is what CHEO was talking about, that this is about us growing, because every parent wants their children to do better. Yeah. And we often equate that to, get the better job and do those other things. But truthfully, it's like, no, I want my child to be more in tune with their emotions than me early on. Don't wait to tell your male friend that you love them until you're pouring out liquor and spray paint the mural. Like, let them know that you love them while they're alive, and they may not make some of those decisions that end up in early death. So that bettering can come from us, and then just having faith. Like, I know that what you did, or better yet, you may not know what you did, because protecting myself was causing me to wear the shell to not let you see what you did. So then I was beating myself up on the inside. And I'll end with this. What my brother Terry, he's watching, him and I, we went and visited my dad, and he was in the hospital, saw him, and I felt like I did good. Like I felt like I was good. I did good. I said my goodbye, this, that, and the other. My son, once again, he was like, Pop, why doesn't grandpa love me? I was done. Because in his mind, I'm asking you that question because he's never told me that he loved me. And when I compare his movements to my grandmother's, it's not even close. So then I'm telling him, because I got a chance to look in my father's eyes. I was like, Isaiah, he loves you. And then Isaiah was like, well, I want to go see him. I told you, I went to see him. I thought I was done. So then I called T back, like, yo, we got to make a trip back. And so then we get into the room, and he talked to Isaiah in a way that I got a glimpse of how he would have wanted to speak to me. And then he began to talk to Isaiah about the father that he had. And the sorry that you're looking for, I didn't get it. Isaiah got it. He apologized to Isaiah for not being the grandfather that he deserved. So, but that wouldn't have happened if I was waiting for it. It was, okay, I'm just going to step. Because a lot of times we want God to do things, but we don't never come and let the things happen. It's like wanting the play to take place, but we never show up at the theater. We never get on stage, and we wonder why the play didn't happen. So it's about us being in position to let it happen, and then trusting what's supposed to happen will happen. Just like this discussion, this wasn't a coincidence.
That's right. Yep.
You know, like, you know your sister and all of her things that are nonsensical that created this moment for us to have this moment. So I'm trusting that you will be fine, because if nothing else, the one thing that I'm hearing from you, the best of you, is how you love those two boys, and you don't put conditions on them.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I know.
Wow.
April, can I say a few before I
Yes,
jump?
please.
So
please.
I don't know. I just feel like we channeling each other. Timothy, I mean, bro, that's just like pulling the words right out, you know. And Omar, you know, I've done work with rites of passage groups, men, and sitting in circles and trying to fight, you know, with all these ideas of masculinity. And what I've heard, you probably heard the term fatherhood wound, right? You know, like, and it's not just for boys, but it's this emotional traumatic scar that we carry, and some of us carry it to our graves. And so I was talking about my father earlier in the story, right? And then our relationship changed and transformed, and it has continued to get better. Now I'm almost moving into the role of caretaker. He's 87, and my parents are together, and we're, you know, basically taking care of both of them. But I was fortunate enough to kind of have, I guess, an intervention. My brother and I think when he was 75 or so, we went to him and was just calling him on the, you know, just saying just not unloading, but really just saying all the things that really let us down. And he showed up for it. I mean, because we went away for a weekend. Like, we went to this spot, this cabin, and he was there. And I don't think he knew we were going to come at him like that, but it brought him to tears, because he realized he had to actually hear it from us in a way that was just as grown men with children of our own. And so that was something that, again, just brought us, again, like just closer in other ways that allow me to still have tolerance, and tolerance is the right word, for his generational baggage in terms of how he is this man on an island in many ways. He just, doesn't need help. He has a saying, he's like, help the bear. Don't help me. I'm good. I don't know who the bear is. I don't know, but that's just this, this concept of like, I'm a man, I'm a strong person. I'm gonna get it done on my own. Right. And we realize if you wait for that, sorry, you're not going to always get it. If you're not going to always get it in the verbal way you might expect it. But if you listen to like April was saying, you listen to how we communicate as human beings, the energies and the spirits in which we, converse, you'll be fortunate to give it. And so, April, I just want to say I'm really thankful that I had a chance to be on this.
Yes.
I want to say also that I think we as fathers nurture our children and hopefully grow them to a place where then they can grow us as we, as we get older, because if we're not listening, we're not going to grow, and we have to continue to grow. So I want to hear a little bit of feedback. I want to stay on the conversation, but I got about 5 minutes. So
So one, I appreciate everything that everyone said. So you can hear this too before you have to leave. Everything that everyone said, and trust it has made a difference. I'm still going to give my apologies when I can, but trust that now, and I don't want to make my sister or either one of them too happy. Yeah, maybe I need to take a couple of trips, one to Florida, one to Atlanta, just to show up, one time and be like, "How you doing? I'm good," and just because of what you all said. So I and what you said too, April. I know you said it before, but but yeah. So I very much. I'm still going with I don't need to hear it from them or hear it in words from them. I'm still going with the sorry. That's still my motto. I got to say sorry to let people know that I understand what I may have done. However, I appreciate what you all said, and maybe I need to book a trip and two.
Yeah, I mean that things have a way of melting. You know what I mean? Things have a way of melting. Things have a way of maturing, right? And I'm grateful that that we're here alive. Every time we wake up, it's a victory. You know what I mean? There's a room for something else. And this is why I love you all so much. I love the brotherhood that I have. Oh wait, that's our sister.
Yeah, I told you she was on. I said,
I agreed that to be a series.
Alexis Taylor is the biological sister of me and Omar. We don't all have the same. Omar and I have the same mother and father. Omar, Alexis, and I.
All three of us have the same father.
Father, right? Yeah. So welcome, hey Lex.
She's been up there for a minute,
but she always does. She always does.
Can I just jump in real quick as
yes.
And like I said, a longtime father, I've made tons of mistakes, a whole bunch of mistakes. Sometimes I've been corrected by my wife, my own children, my friends, everybody, mother, father, everybody has corrected me, and and they made tons of mistakes with me. One of the things that I say is and I used to be a dean in the school, so dealing with mediations, kids, problems, all this. And one of the things is people, we always want to be judged by our intent, but we judge others by their impact. Right. And one of the ways where you need to kind of go back, the way that you can get to forgiveness or even understanding, you have to take a moment back and say, well, what was this person's intent? My father may have done some things and he had great intent. When masculinity, when we say stop crying, when men say to their young boys, stop crying, we're not doing this because we want to be toxic, toxic masculinity. We're doing this because we're like, the world doesn't care. We want to make sure that you're prepared for this. Our intent is in the right place, but we're missing how it comes out. Yeah, but we're missing what the impact is when the kid is taught not to cry. When the kid is taught, when your father doesn't say, I love you, like those. So one of those things, we just have to recognize that. And we have to go back and question people's intent at the time and, kind of separate it for the moment so you can get to the healing place.
This is what happened when Kev put on a collared shirt. Like, yo, this is fire. I don't get this on our podcast.
Kevin, also, can I add this? And you all tell me if you think it has value. The intent, but the intent and who is showing up when the hurtful words are said. that I don't love you, or get out my face, or shut up, or you've never done anything to make me proud. Like, is that the alcohol talking? Is that the unresolved issues talking? Like, who's present when those harmful words are said? You know what I mean? Because I don't always know, or maybe it's worth considering or asking. Not that we could do it in the moment, but looking back, like, was that their best selves? Was it their hurt selves, their broken selves, the crackhead self? You know what I mean? All of those different things might be worth considering.
April,
I'll say this.
April, spiritual attachments are real. You know
Say it
that.
again.
I said, that spiritual attachments are real.
Yes.
And as much as we want to talk about, we tend to just talk about spirit in this positive context.
We know better.
And we know better. So,
yeah.
there are times that literally you have to speak past that individual, because that is not their right mind talking. That it's not their heart speaking. And so you are in the midst of spiritual warfare that the world only presents as physical. So then you can couch yourself on I hate you and this, that, and the other, which builds off of what Kev said. But that would be a whole nother show.
But we're going to have to have that show, because can I say this? In the tradition and Ifa tradition, there's something called Elenini. Tim, we've talked about this before, right? And like beyond that, there are benevolent forces that reside and probably sitting right here next to us, and benevolent ones and malevolent ones. And to your point, Tim, I'm just expanding. Sometimes the malevolent energy, the forces have a grip on us like this. And sometimes we feed that energy knowingly, sometimes, or not, right? And so that's my point, Tim. I'm expanding what you're saying, because the presence of malevolent forces in our lives, in our bodies, in our psyche, sometimes those are dominant. Those are dominant, and sometimes they're so close that we think that they belong with us. You understand what I'm saying? We think that. Go ahead.
Yeah, you and I had this conversation before, and here's the difference between me and my sister. One of the differences, although we are very much alike, same coin. I'm up for the fight, right? so right. I am not always the person that goes, you got things going on with you. You didn't mean that. That was not your intent. I'm ready to fight the impact. That's just my personality. Now, at times I understand. I got to go, hey, when they stop fighting, then I got to stop fighting. So, but like I said, it's the first move, right? So, and I understand that's my block.
I'm sorry. I need you to restate, or maybe somebody else can restate. I'm not following the point.
I got the point.
Can I jump in before you go? Because I just want to say, April, you're a benevolent force, and I appreciate you. I'm not gonna acknowledge the other one, but I'm gonna acknowledge you as a benevolent force. Unfortunately, I mean, I've been an honor to be on the call. This is great. If you have another one, I want to be back in the conversation. We got to do it virtually, not just virtually. Maybe we can be on stage, and because these are conversations we need to have. So I, honor you, April, for inviting me. Thank you so much. You family, and Kevin, Tim, Omar, Jam. Good seeing you brothers virtually. Hopefully we can see each other, in person.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, everybody continue the conversation. Yeah.
All right, then. Take care, brother.
Take care.
Go ahead, Jam. You can explain it.
I just said it. I mean, almost with the shits. Sometimes people, some people are up for the fight, regardless of what the fight is. They're up for the fight. And Omar saying, "Yo, let's fight.
Impact first.
Let's have it."
Yeah.
Okay, so I did not mean for this to be about Omar, but I got to say this, and this is going to come out chunky, and maybe I'll regret it. I don't know what role I have in our family, but I've taken on the fight, and not meaning to. Right? I've taken on the fight and not meaning to because I'm present. So I've seen our father with his panic attacks. I've seen my father, all of the fights that my siblings don't have with our father, I've experienced. If that makes sense at all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
not that, I'm sorry, fight was the wrong word. You're right. Fight was the wrong word, because you have seen it, because you have taken care of your father, our father. Absolutely. 100%. Right. And it has shown me what the kind of relationship I do as I get older, right, that I don't want to have with my children. Meaning the relationship that I have with my father, I want to make sure I don't have it with my sons. That's what I mean. Fight was the wrong word, because you fight the way that you fight. I do a different fight, right? You fight with your kind spirit and your belief and I fight with my belief too, but we that's what I'm saying. We're different. So I fight the way you come at me. You fight with people's intent, right? Understanding their intent and understanding their pain. That's what I meant. Does that make sense? More sense?
More.
Yeah.
Kevin, were you about to say something? And we shifted because this is now getting awkward to me.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not awkward to you all. And I know sorry, go ahead, Kev. Go ahead.
Yeah,
I mean, to be mindful of the time, y'all.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Drake.
Just overall, bringing it back to impact and intent. You know,
Jam,
somebody
stop.
could do somebody could do something wrong and it has a positive impact. Like, you know, somebody could sell drugs to pay for you to go to college. Right. Great impact. The intent, you know, they had a decent intent, but you know, that kind of particular action was wrong. So we have to be careful when we only judge it strictly on what the impact was, because like in business work, we all do business things, and we've all had great results at times, even though we were doing not necessarily bad work, but the road that we were traveling down was not going to be sustainable. So you always have to come back to intent. You're always going to have to, no matter at what point in time, even if it's for your own personal healing. And regardless, like, hey, we have all these problems with our kids are going to have problems with what we did.
Yeah, that's right.
We're going to want them to say, hey, we want to want them to take a moment and say, well, you got to understand where I was coming from at this time, at this state, where I thought would be like, when I wouldn't let you do these things, I wouldn't let you go to these places. So it's all, you know, just never lose sight of it, even in your anger. I get it. You know?
Yep. And that's why, and now these will be my last words, as Drake said, we have to watch the time. Yeah. And this is why this is impactful for me, and I hope for the audience, and still to me around fatherhood, because understanding our relationships with our fathers, with our parents, helps us, I hope, become better parents. Right. So the impact, intent, I know my sons are going to come back at me for things that I've done. I also know I put them through pain just talking to them, because I want them to understand my intent in the moment. Right? They're probably just like, "Oh my God, could you just punish me and shut up?" But because I want them to.
Marc too.
Yeah. Because I want them to understand the intent, and I think that matters. And I hope that is going to change the impact in a relationship, or be different than a relationship that I currently have with my father.
You know, I think. If we talk about blood and bond, and all of us impact lives of those that go beyond who ends up on our tax forms. So I believe the verb of fathering reaches far, and honestly, the impact of that may be something that we will never fully know. Yeah. You know what I mean? Where it's like, Jam, there's a lot of the bloom that you've been able to see, which has been great, which fuels you forward in the work. But there may be some young people at the time where you might not have thought you was effectively reaching them. And they're going to go off in their own way and hold on to those interactions. Kev, you talk about running into young people now who have young people who are the age that they were when they were a student in your school, and you probably felt like you called us complaining about them, and they be the ones who can run down everything that you said to them, you know, word by word. So, because one thing that didn't come up in this whole conversation is you can't say you love and you don't discipline.
Sure.
And sometimes those who have received the most discipline or been pushing back against it the most will be the ones that come around and realize that, yo, you was doing it from a manner where you was loving me more than I was loving myself at that moment. So I couldn't fully appreciate how you were coming at me. And so I just want us to hold that and understand that we're in a position now. We're fathers, not just in the home. We're fathers in the community. We're fathers in school. We're fathers in our place of worship. The slang term now, we're unks.
Yeah.
So if a young person is saying, yo, what's up, unk? They are leaning to us. And if you think about the uncle is the brother of the father. So if they saying, what's up, unk? They are looking at you with that same reverence and regard. And we don't get to choose who calls us that. They're calling it out of a position of need and love. Yeah. So this is a sacred work, being a father. It's a great, great thing to be.
I want to thank you, Tim. Jim, I want to give you the last words before we go to our outro. So everybody just stay on because we are about to close out. I see the audience. I don't even know what the comments are. I see they're on fire. Everybody, even as we close out, tell us where you're watching from. If you're on Twitter, go over to YouTube. And on that note, before we do the outros, Jim, I want to give you the last word, sir.
I was going to echo what Tim just said. Sometimes you have effects you don't know. You know, I had an athlete when he first was coming to us. Every time he ran, his workout was so hard, boy would throw up. Then when he finally graduated, got a scholarship to college. After he was a sophomore in college, he sent me back a copy of his essay that he wrote for his entry essay for college. And it literally brought me to tears because he told me about how he threw up first day of practice. He was never going to come back there, but he came back. And he said that taught him about himself, and he believed in himself more than he ever had because he endured and eventually became one of the state's best runners. And, wow. You know, I had no idea about that. And when he sent me the email, this is his sophomore year in college, he's gone. I already moved on with another group of kids, all that sort of stuff. It literally brought me to tears. So yes, you are absolutely right. And we have to be mindful that there are those watching, even when we don't know we're being watched.
Speaking of, and I know this is fair to say, the impact that you had on Omar Jam when we were in school. Omar, you want to finish that? But how?
No, you go.
The impact that you had as a leader when we were students at Howard University, Jam. Your nickname is the nickname of Omar's son, Giovanni. You know what I mean? And yeah. I just found that out Thanksgiving. You know what I mean? So I don't call my nephew any nickname. I call him by his full name, you know, whatever. But when Omar told me that, when we were reminiscing about our life and, you know, growing up in Black Neoforce, I was like, wow. So I'm just affirming that 30-something years later, you just found out.
Right. Right.
Right. And you and Omar just reconnected like weeks ago. Yeah. So all of these 30 years, all of Giovanni's 13 years, speaking of impact in your leadership on your peers, not just the people we're coaching, right? But on our peers, it shows up. Whether we know the impact or not, it shows up. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. I'm gonna figure out a way how to close this out. But we do our regular closeout. Please don't say that this was important to you. Please don't say that you love this conversation and you're not telling people about ascending, right? Sonia Sanchez, I see this all the time. She's like, don't tell me you love me and you ain't bought my book. You know what I mean? So go ahead and buy Be a Father. You can get it in time for the way Drake and I are just always connected. Go get that book. You can share it. The stories are amazing and life-changing. Go tell people that we are live every Saturday at 11 a.m. on Marc Lamont Hill, who's a father himself. Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube
11 a.m.
channel.
Eastern.
11 a.m. Eastern. See how Talk about my other brother. I have a whole bunch of brothers. Omar is my only biological, and Drake is like might as well be my biological. Thank you, Drake.
Don't put that on Drake.
Thank you, Tim.
I'm gonna say that brother done been through enough. Come on now.
Yeah, I check that burden for all y'all.
Thank you. Sorry.
Oh my gosh.
April, don't forget about the fundraiser.
Yes, I was coming to the fundraiser. Yes. So on the outros, definitely follow me on social media. April R. Silver and the Killer Work Songs. We're going to do some behind the scenes content, some fresh new content, but just follow me now. Stop what you're doing. Follow me there for sure. For sure. We also want to do, put this, if we can get that URL in the chat, because the email list, I want to reward you all, the regulars who watch the show. We're going to have merch for you, just different things. Some of you, I want to get you a copy of the book. You don't have to pay for autographed copies of the book. So definitely get that URL in the chat, because that's the email list. I don't care what y'all say. I own my email list. Y'all don't own, we don't own no social media. So I always maintain, social media is critically important, but you got to make sure that you have something that you own. So if that shit go down, we can be in communication with one another. So Drake, you want to do the fundraiser now? You want to put up the graphic, because in a couple of hours, we're about to support our brothers. Speaking of brothers and fathers and, the unity and all those things that we have amongst each other. Drake, okay. So tonight, thank you, Drake. Tonight, on this day at 7 p.m., we're going to be doing a virtual fundraiser for Radka. It's virtual. Don't go to Asasaya like we announced before. It's virtual. Email us support for Raz at Aquila Work Songs so we can get you the Zoom. It's tonight at 7. It's going to be short and quick. You don't have to donate to come hear Raz Mayor Baraka speak. You don't have to donate. We just want you to show up to learn how you can help to crystallize your language on why this election on January 10th is of national historic importance, but hear from him directly. It's just going to be he and I, 7 p.m. Eastern tonight on Zoom. Email us at support4raz@aquilaworksongs.com. Then we will send you the Zoom link, right? That's how we'll do. So I think that's it, Drake. Thank you, Drake. Oh, and or you can go to that website to get the link. So, Drake, did I cover everything?
Yes,
I think so.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So with the part two is the last Saturday of this conversation, is the last Saturday in June. Maybe we'll just have to have a super, maybe y'all all can come back and some new people or whatever, but we're going to do a part 2. So we thank you. There's no ascending next Saturday. I need a break, real talk. I got to get some things done. But on the 14th, Marc will be here. We'll bring in Marc, just he and I, day before my birthday. So he's the featured guest. It's confirmed. June 14th is the time. So Omar, I love you. Jam, I love you. Tim, I love you. Kevin, I love you. Drake, I love you. Audience members, thank you so much. Let us know we're doing a good job. And we'll be back on the 14th. On that note, I think that's it. Stay up.